All right, good afternoon, and thank you so much for coming. I'm Una Daly from the Community College Consortium at the Open Courseware Consortium. I know that's a bit of a mouthful. And this is going to be about open textbooks primarily and open educational resources. And let me tell you just a little bit about myself. So I'm the Director of Community College Outreach at the Open Courseware Consortium. So the Open Courseware Consortium is a big group that is a worldwide organization focused on open ed. My focus is the community colleges, and it's primarily North America, so US and Canada, although we're looking to expand outside of the United States because there's a lot of colleges that are technical and adult education colleges that are outside the US. They don't all use the same terms that we do. Prior to joining higher education, I was actually a software engineer and manager for 20 years, actually a little more than 20 years. I was at Apple, 3Com, Motorola, some of the companies you might have known in Silicon Valley, because that is still where I reside today. So, and this is my fourth time coming to the MPIC conference, and I just love it because it's kind of like coming home to the other nerds and engineers. And so now I'd like to ask you to introduce yourself briefly, if you would. Let me know what your organization or what college you're with, and maybe what you're interested in open textbooks.
My name is Dina Sarah. I'm with Daly College in Oakland. I'm the co-chair of the Media Communications Department, and anything to do with textbooks and making it easy for the students is interesting.
Great. Glad you could make it.
I'm also with the City College of Consortium. I'm currently the Dean of Library and Media Services, so I'm interested in how certainly we can offer more information about libraries.
Great. Thanks for coming, Allison. I know you and I met at lunch.
I'm Randy Whiteley from Contra College in San Pablo, Bay here.
Yeah.
And it's computer information systems technology business. I'm looking at textbooks. You probably have the students won't buy the textbooks because they're cheap.
They won't.
They're expensive.
Well, they are.
The students are not cheap.
Well, because the thing is, I know these students are getting a $2,500 check for their financial aid, and they won't send it to buy their textbooks because they complain they can't do it. So I think the way to find other sources for textbooks is huge to get them that information.
Okay.
Because it's very hard for them to achieve without the concept.
Yeah, we don't want them to have to make that choice based on a financial decision. Absolutely. Kevin.
I'm Kevin Kelly. I teach at San Francisco State University and working in an online professional development startup. But my interest in open educational resources is that I teach a class teaching students how to learn with technology. I may end up writing an open textbook or something like that, so I'm interested in knowing more about how teaching works and just hear more.
Glad you could make it, Kevin, and only fair disclosure is Kevin is a former professor of mine. Yeah. Cheyenne.
My name is Jeffrey Wall. I'm from Westfield College in Law and Florida in Capital. I'm teaching engineering and physics classes there. And I'm interested in what kind of open source textbooks that I've got for engineering courses and physics courses to help me with that. My students are using things all over the
Great.
My name is Aaron Becker. I'm a consultant for everything. I'm working on the application project. Previous to that, I was the passion exclusive. And my interest in open perspective is seeing by aspects from equity to K-12 and also corporate 13.
Great, great. And we'll talk primarily about community college and textbooks, but obviously this is an area for high school as well. And there's a fair amount of overlap. All right. So we are going to do some hands-on. I want to give you some background information about open ed and talk a little bit about the California state legislation that was passed this fall to support 50 open textbooks in the highest enrolled area. And then we're going to talk about some of the major repositories for open ed and open textbooks. There still is not a single place to go. and some of them are discipline specific, and you'll get a chance to look for some and maybe share that with some of the other folks in here. So as I mentioned, Open Ed as the sort of current incarnation, it started about 11 years ago. MIT decided to publish their courses online. Since that time, it has grown enormously. The Open Courseware Consortium itself represents 300 institutions in over 46 countries. There are a lot of institutions that have their own Open, which are not part of the consortium as well. So Open Ed is very big. We are the largest global organization that promotes Open Ed worldwide. And with regards to community colleges, there's 109 in our consortium and who are actually members of the OCW, but we invite all community colleges to participate in our activities. So the mission at the Community College Consortium is expanding access to education, and part of that is helping to fuel faculty innovation. And we do that through professional development, and I was showing you what our fall lineup was. These are all open webinars. They're online using the CCC Confer system, as a matter of fact. And we usually have 2 to 3 either community college leaders in OER, or they may be from higher ed, but with a focus on how that applies to community colleges. And so you can see we really ran the gamut last fall with from open textbooks, saving money, to accessibility, how do you produce OER that is accessible for all learners, to what do MOOCs mean for community colleges. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the California Open Textbook Law. Are many of you familiar with that? Maybe show of hands. Okay. Okay, well, you've come to the right place. So there was 2 laws that were passed where they were signed by Jerry, and here's a picture of Jerry signing the bill. The first one is called the Open Educational Resources Council, and the second one was the Digital Open Source Library bill. And I'm going to go into just a little bit detail about each of these. So the first bill, which was 1052, established the OER Council. It's a joint council with 3 faculty members from the 3 public sectors of higher ed. Not that the private sectors can't participate in this, but they're not part of the OER Council itself. And their job is to select the 50 lower division openly licensed textbooks that will be either acquired or produced. They're establishing selection and production criteria, and they're going to issue RFPs for this. And this RFP could go out to Wiley or Pearson, or it could go out to the math faculty. And there will be compensation associated with that. But the big difference is that these materials will be openly licensed, which means that the state of California technically owns it, but the state of California is making these Creatively Commons license. And I'm going to go into that in more detail now, but that's an open license, which means even if Pearson develops it for us, the content remains public. And that is the key piece with Open Ed, is using our money wisely and retaining our rights. That's one of the key differentiators. So that council will be also working on this digital open source library. So the digital open source library is an open repository which will hold those 50 open textbooks, but will also have an authoring system, so any faculty member who puts a proposal out and meets the requirements can submit in open resources there. It will be web-based. There's some talk about it being similar to Merlot in the way Merlot works. It is actually going to be administered by the CSU, which Merlot is somewhat administered by the CSU, and it will be in coordination with the UC system and the Community College System of California. So any questions about that? All right. So the big emphasis here is on saving money for students and empowering also our faculty to own their curriculum. And because with openly licensed materials, you can take a textbook that's written by somebody else, you can customize that for your students, whatever your need is. All right, so I have a couple of true or false here. And these are kind of trick questions, so there really isn't a right or wrong answer, but I'll go ahead. All OER is in the public domain. Raise your hand if you think that's true. Okay. Alice thinks that's true, and that's fine. Some OER is in the public domain. Does anyone want to clarify that?
There's usually some stipulation on how you can use it.
That's correct. So there's a number of different open licenses as well as public domain. When you put something in the public domain, or what more commonly happens is, I know you as a librarian know, is something ages into public domain. The rights are given away entirely in the sense that the authorship no longer has to follow the material. But with an open license, such as Creative Commons, or the old ones, the GNU licenses, the open source ones, actually the authorship remains with the materials, even as they're modified and move on. And so that's the difference. What's our next one? Publisher-produced textbooks are better than open textbooks. Okay. True? Yeah, Kevin, if I heard you. What?
Well, I think it's depending on the authorship as well as the editing that goes into it, and the understanding of the content. So there's research, writing, editing, and then making it easy for students to get what they need to learn. So ancillary materials or leading questions that help them think about it. So I would say that both publishers and non-publishers can do a great job with textbooks, and it really has to do with the organization of the content and delivered in a way for instruction. All those things play out.
Absolutely. Kevin's absolutely right. It really depends. The one advantage with open textbooks is that you can modify them. They're generally digital, and there isn't a copyright restriction, which allows someone to customize. But you're absolutely right. It's really the time and effort put in on a textbook.
Now, is that modification, is that only true if they have that in the Creative Commons license? Because I know some.
That is correct. And we can talk a little bit about that. Creative Commons has 3 different flavors, essentially, that you would want to look at. I will say that the California State Legislature has taken the least restrictive, which is what we call only the attribution license for Creative Commons. So all open textbooks are peer-reviewed. Yeah, they are not. I mean, because open textbooks, I would say, until recently, probably the majority were written by individual faculty. And sometimes they would have another faculty member peer review it. But more and more that is happening. Many of the repositories have a way for you to comment on books, and some of them actually host reviews of the textbooks, but they are not all peer reviewed. That is a goal. We would like to get to that place. All OER is free. No. So by definition, OER is free, but it isn't free to produce. But for once it's produced and it has that license on it, it is free to reuse. That's what the Creative Commons license means. It doesn't mean that it was free to produce. We know that high quality materials are not free to produce. They take time and effort. But in fact, from once material has a Creative Commons license on it, even though they can charge for the initial, it gets a little confusing. Even though it can be charged for initially, the content is labeled open, which means it can be reused then and passed on freely to others. And final one, e-textbooks are open textbooks.
No, you can buy them.
Yeah, absolutely. Open textbooks generally are available digitally, but not the other way around. Okay, you guys are way too good. So here's the definition from the Department of Education, and it says that teaching, learning, and research resources that reside in the public domain or have been released under an intellectual property license that permits their free reuse or repurposing by others. So that's where the free and intellectual property license in addition to public. Yes?
You use the word reuse. Was that was it a time? Is there a difference?
Repurposing means converting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't think. No, it just means use or reuse by others. Yeah. So they can. So actually, you could modify something and you could relicense it under an open license or under a copyright license. So we're not going to go into too much detail about that because I'm not a lawyer, but I will go into a little more detail here. And so it runs the gamut, what open educational resources, from books to courses, Khan Academy, those videos. It could be tests, software, etc. Any tools or materials that support ready access to knowledge. So an open license, if you take a look at this picture down here, we've got public domain on the far right, we've got Creative Commons in the middle, and we've got full copyright on the left. And so it's a continuum so that an author, from once you create a material, it automatically is copyrighted, correct? But you can choose to put a Creative Commons license on it, which allows you to choose the different restrictions. But what it means is if you're on the other side as a user of something that's been Creative Commons licensed, you don't have to go back to the author and ask for permission as you need to do with a copyright. You can follow the guidelines, and the minimal one, which is California is using, is you need to maintain their authorship. So you have to put their attribution on whatever material you republish. There are some other flavors that Kevin was mentioning. One is non-derivative, which means a person could put a Creative Commons license on that says you may not modify this. You may reuse, recopy, redistribute, but you can't modify it. We actually don't consider that open, but it is a Creative Commons license. Yes?
One of the issues I have is for my visually impaired students is converting them to text. I use some voice software that is excellent of reading them, but I got to constantly contact the license holders to get the approval to convert it to a format given specific students and all that.
If you talk with the Creative Commons people, they would say that even if it says non-derivative, you could do that for accessibility purposes. And I know the Chaffee law here in California allows modifications for accessibility. Bookshare, do you ever work with Bookshare?
Oh, yeah.
Because they get permission from the publishers to make modifications to textbooks and to put them in a format that can be run on a DAISY. They work with print disabled users.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because that's the big thing. It's take ebooks and have them read to them, or just convert them to D3 so you can listen to them on their own. And the hard thing is figure out the license is for that kind of repurposing. It's not a modification, it's just a transformation of media.
Exactly. Yeah, and if you have any questions, I would recommend you talk to Bookshare. I mean, they may not necessarily choose your book, but they do about 80-20, 80% K through 12, and they do 20% higher ed books. So, and they're actually local. They're in Palo Alto. A nice group. I work with them. So it's less restrictive, and it's free to access online, and we make a big point about that, and free to print. Some of the open ed repositories have a print-on-demand service where a student can purchase a book for somewhere between $20 and $40, depending on how big it is, so a hard copy. Because we know that 70% of students, year after year, the survey is done, 70% of students still want to have a hard copy available. They may not buy it, but they think they want it. So an open textbook starts out as an all rights reserved simply as it's created. All the materials you create as an author are copyrighted under our law, and that's most of the international law is like that too. And then you put a Creative Commons license on top of it, which allows others to reuse it, and it moves from all rights to some rights reserved. So Creative Commons sits on top of copyright law. It doesn't get rid of it, but it promotes sharing because it allows you to decide. And as I mentioned earlier, the different flavors are you can specify non-commercial. So when you release it, you could say anyone can reuse this, but not for a commercial purpose. Non-derivatives we just talked about. That one we actually really strongly recommend against because we don't think that's open. And the final one is you can also specify if somebody reuses this and republishes, they have to share it alike, so they have to use the same license I did. We also don't recommend that because it makes it difficult to mix things. So we recommend the minimum one, which is simply, it's the basic Creative Commons with it's called CC BY, but it means that basically you keep the author on it, the person who wrote it.
Yes, please. If I'm an author of a textbook, why would I license it? Is that the good for?
If you're an author of a textbook, are you working with a publisher or simply for yourself?
Let's say I'm working with myself.
Yeah.
So I do this because I want to promote.
Well, there's a lot of different thoughts.
Or do I get anything out of it? I'm just wondering.
The motivation. Yeah, the motivation. Well, that's a good point. Absolutely. And, a lot of authors are grant funded. A lot of open textbook authors are grant funded, as the California textbooks will be. They're grant funded, so there is a payment for the work done. In some cases, and this is more popular in fiction, on Amazon, if you release a number of chapters of your book, your sales go way up, and there's research data to support it. Sometimes people make available their entire novel digitally, but if you want to get a print copy, you have to pay. And if the book is popular enough, it actually can be a very effective strategy. So it may not lend itself quite as well to textbooks, but there's different models to look at. And I agree with you. People aren't going to toil away indefinitely. But the truth is, if you don't make it open, it's going to be hard to market it and make it, and so people can see it. And I was trying to think of actually where Creative Commons really took off was in music. So there were musicians who they weren't the big name musicians. They were people getting started. They wanted their music out there with their name on it. They wanted other people to remix it, but they wanted credit in the sense that people would know about their name. And so they did that as they were building their reputation. And it offers them a lot of other opportunities. So things have changed so dramatically with the internet. Distribution costs now are zero. So it's all about marketing. And so here is just an example of a database book, just to show you what the savings can be. And I know, especially for those of you who teach in IT, you know these textbooks are very expensive. Here's a database systems textbook that is used by a college actually in British Columbia. Adrienne Watt is an instructor up there. She teaches database at Northwest Community College in British Columbia. And she got frustrated with her students having to pay that kind of money, and so she actually wrote this open textbook. 40% of the content is from Connections and Merlot, and 60% she wrote. And she's now using that with her students. She has another faculty member who's using it. There's lots of different models, but the savings is undeniable for students. So these are the sites I'm going to talk about, and we're going to do some searching. So if you've got your computer turned on, we're going to start doing some searching. And I'll talk really briefly about these before we go on. I'm going to take you first to College Open Textbooks, which is a group that I work for, and used to be part of the consortium. They're still sort of part of the consortium, but they're on a side path now. And there's 750 textbooks there with about 150 that are peer-reviewed. It's a very simple site, so if you're new to open textbooks, I recommend it. It's organized by subject area. Connections, how many people are familiar with Connections? An excellent site out of Rice University, and they have a new initiative called OpenStax College, which is focused specifically on textbooks for community colleges. I'm not going to talk too much about that because there's no IT books yet. Because when we talk about the 50 highest enrolled classes, IT doesn't usually make the cut. Sometimes business skills and things like that too. Merlot, of course, I think almost all of you have heard about Merlot. I'm not going to talk about Orange Grove and OER Commons because we don't have time, but they're both very interesting sites. Orange Grove is actually a repository that is sponsored by the Florida State and has some great resources in it. OER Commons is a repository and it's a search site. So for those of you who are librarians or focused on that, you're going to love that site, but it takes a little while to get used to it. We won't have time today to go through that. All right, so I'm going to take you first off to College Open Textbooks, and I went directly to their textbooks by subject. There's actually a lot of other resources on here. Like I mentioned, there's peer reviews. So for this one, I'm just going to click on computer science. And you can see that there's a long list of textbooks in there. And some are OER rather than textbooks. Is everyone able to get that one open? Or you can. I'm going to give you a few minutes to play with it. Yeah, and I wonder, I'm going to try and,
Open textbooks.
how do I make the font bigger? collegeopentextbooks.org.
I think we hold down either the control key. You can try rolling the wheel on the mouse.
Oh, okay. Oh, perfect. Thank you. Okay. So this site is nice because for folks who are just getting started with open textbooks, you can actually choose where your domain is, your discipline. And in this particular one, we have computer science books, Ajax. Is anyone out there? The gentleman in the back, Jinyen. Sorry, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. What do you teach?
Engineering implementation, which is C programming.
C programming. All right. I'm pretty sure we have some C programming in here. Did you find one? I know we have a C++. Yeah, there's a C++ program. Sorry, textbook at Connections. Oh, okay. An object. Thank you, Mike. C#. Oh, that one was up. Oh, yeah. Here's programming in C. Yeah. You have to kind of go down at the titles are a little bit confusing, but it is alphabetical. So there, I'm gonna let you come back to that one in a minute, and I'm gonna take you through a couple of them so that you can see. Let's see, it was Control Tab to get back. Sorry, I'm a Mac person, so Alt Tab. There we go. All right, and the next one I'm gonna take you to is Merlot. And show of hands once again, those people who've been to Merlot before. Okay, so a few of you haven't. Merlot is primarily a referatory, and like the College Open textbooks, it has peer reviews, but what Merlot also has is you can actually add resources yourself. If you create an account on Merlot, you can add in resources. Without adding an account, you can search and find things. But if you want to put materials in, as in you want to link to something great that you found out there, you can do that, and you can also add comments. And how interesting is that to faculty to find comments from other faculty? Pretty interesting. It's not a peer review, but what it means is there's a peer rating system in Merlot where you can fill in comments. Let me show you what I mean. So Merlot has more than just textbooks. It has any kind of educational resource you want out there. It actually has mobile apps that are linked to from Merlot. It has animations. I'm simply showing you open textbooks today because of our limited time, and that was kind of our focus. But in Merlot, I could go ahead and type in computer science, and I'm going to switch the category here to science and technology. And I recall computer science brings back a limited number. What I wanted to show you as soon as the search, hopefully the internet will come back here pretty quickly. If you look on the right-hand side here, you can see that some of these have peer reviews and they have comments. So that means you as a faculty member, if you decide to review the resource, or if you create the link and put it into Merlot, so this is a way for you to share with others what you found, you can actually add comments. So here is Introduction to Computer Science, Discovering Information Systems, and you can see that the first three don't have any peer review, but there is a comment on this computer networking principles, protocols, and practice. So somebody has entered in, Sean Connor from the Saylor Foundation is the one who entered this resource in, and there's a link now to the book. So you see the computer networking book that I found in there. So Sean has said that this is from Saylor Foundation. Saylor Foundation is an open college education online. I don't know if you've heard of them before, but and they actually assign textbooks to their open courses for achieving a college degree. So let me click on this, and this is actually going to take us now to the database entry at Merlot, and when I click on that, it's going to actually take me out here to this site. Sorry, this is still within Merlot, and it says go to the material. So when I click on this, it's going to actually take me all the way over to the Sailor org. And you can see that there's a book online here. And I'm sorry, I didn't show you that with College Open Textbook. But so both Merlot and College Open Textbooks are what we call referatories, which means they have lists of open textbooks, and when you click on them, it takes you out to the actual site that's hosting it. Evan, you look confused.
No.
No, you had something in your eye. Yeah, so you can see that this book was written by Oliver Bonaventure, and it's Computer Networking Principles and Protocols, and you as the teacher can now review it, and you can actually pass this link on to your students. And this link could be embedded into your learning management system. And you could do it chapter by chapter. Many of these have a PDF version, so a student could actually download it onto their desktop as well and just use it that way, or they can use it online as we're doing it right now, and we're just going through the book. So this is an entire textbook online, and we reached this one through Merlot. All right. How are we doing on time there? Yeah.
On these open source materials, content areas. So when you click on our content areas, is the normal expectation that that particular open source will have the content for an entire course, or just pieces of it?
You know, and it varies quite a bit. So, for instance, College Open textbooks, they're primarily textbooks or courses, but you need to read the introductory material. Merlot, as I mentioned, has all different pieces, but their open textbooks are usually complete. Connections, which I'm showing you right now, and I probably won't go into detail given the time, but Connections, and I'm going to give you these links later on. It's at Rice University. It's learning module based. So each of those learning modules can be combined into a collection that's a textbook. And when you're searching, you can either search for individual modules or you can search for entire collection textbooks. And so an entire collection would be a textbook. But, you know, once again, learning outcomes vary. The people who are writing these may not be at your college. They might be university professors. They might be community college professors. But as we know now, learning outcomes haven't been standardized, unfortunately, and so you may need to bring in other open materials to supplement, and that's part of that adoption process. But that's what makes peer reviews so essential, because when you have a peer review from another community college faculty, which is what College Open Textbooks, that very first site I took you to, they are going to be reviewing it from the point of view of a community college instructor. There will be variations, but it probably will be useful to another community college faculty. Connections, in addition to being a repository, is also an authoring platform. And the really good news, it's XML based. The really good news is that this spring they're releasing an editor that does not require you to know XML. So it's going to be a very easy to use editor. I've actually been able to play with it a little bit. Connections also provides print on demand, which means that if your students want a copy, they can order one through the print-on-demand service. It's usually about $30. In fact, there's like a large statistics book that's about 400 pages, which is available for $30 from Connections. So pretty reasonable. And as I mentioned, Sailor, it's a free and open collection of college courses. With each of the courses that they offer, there's a textbook assigned, and they try to make it an open textbook. And I would recommend that you go out here to sailor.org/books. Because on their bookshelf, they've actually, in addition to the textbooks that they've always had out there, they've just added, I'm not sure, I think it's like almost 100 Flat World Knowledge textbooks, which was a commercial open textbook publisher who has recently changed their policies. And although Flat World Knowledge's focus was more on business and math, you will find some project management textbooks up here. You'll find business design and strategy. You won't find computer science, but you'll find some IT courses up here. And these are wonderful textbooks. These have all been peer-reviewed and have a lot of ancillaries associated with them. So I recommend you go through that Saylor.org books, and you can download them, as you can see right there. You can download them either in PDF or DocX. So if you download in DocX, for instance, you can edit that directly because it's Word. So a really interesting site. Okay. I don't think we're going to have time to review this, but as I mentioned, if you put your name on that list, I will send you a list of the links in these slides later on, probably tomorrow. Here are some of the sites that I showed you, and there's a few other in here, including the BC Campus book that I showed you earlier on database design. So adopting OER and open textbooks is really not different in some senses from a commercial textbook. You have to match it up with your learning outcomes. You need to have selection and evaluation criteria. You need to either have a peer review or be willing to do that work yourself. You may need to add other material. As Alice asked, are these complete textbooks? Well, some are more complete than others. And I didn't even show you Wikipedia and, Wikibooks and Wiki University, which also has some wonderful resources. Most of them are not complete textbooks, but the materials are usually pretty good that are there. Your college may require a curriculum approval for the textbook. As you often do when you create a new course, you have to say what the textbook will be. I mean, the point is not to have any surprises. This is something you should talk about with your colleagues within your departments. They may want to use it too. And together, you can both modify it and add chapters because it's open. And the other really important piece, and someone mentioned earlier, is how do students access it? You want to think about that. Are you going to embed it into your learning management system? Are you going to simply give them a link to one of these repositories and tell them to get it that way? And that might work, and some people do that. Depending on your course, you may want to be sure that the student can get a hard copy. If you choose one of the repositories such as Connections, they will be able to. If you choose some of the other repositories, there may or may not be a hard copy available. There's ways for you to do that, and if you're concerned about that, let me know. We have a lot of professors who have used different ways to make that possible. And also think about your bookstore. We're not really trying to get the bookstore out of the picture here. The bookstore might provide a print-on-demand service, if that made sense, or they might order the books in. If you want your students to have hard copies of these open textbooks, you might have the bookstore play that role. I mentioned in my description the case studies. College of the Canyons, which is down in Santa Clarita, they saved $235,000 this last year. They used open textbooks in 3 disciplines: sociology, water management, and math. De Anza College saved $400,000. And this data is a little old. It's like a year ago. They have one open textbook they use in collaborative statistics used throughout their math department. It's Math 10, and in 4 quarters they saved the students that much money. Scottsdale Community College in Arizona has started using OER for their developmental courses through pre-calculus. This fall they saved $200,000. So, all right, I want to open it up to you guys. Yes.
Going back to her question, because I found a book in that.
Yeah.
And the authors have published books as well.
Yes.
And so it almost feels like, as I read through the introductory content, it feels like, it looks like the standard book and the publishers, these authors have already produced.
So some open textbooks are like that, particularly. So I don't know which one are you looking at? Wait, Alice.
Elementary algebra. I used to teach college.
Okay. Okay.
I see it in video for Simpsons, well-known authors for decades.
Oh, right. Yes. So in many cases, those were published books to start with, and that's why when I showed you that slide about how it's been converted, sometimes colleges or foundations will help to purchase the copyright. So because the publisher, he probably wrote it originally with a publisher who held the copyright, and then that's purchased back, and then the book is given to students. Absolutely, and so that is one large segment of open textbooks, but there's new stuff coming out all the time as well. Yeah, depending on the discipline. Exactly, if things don't change that rapidly, I mean, pedagogy may change, but the teacher can do that themselves in the classroom, yes. We have an advisory group that meets online monthly, and it's open to everybody, and it's a Google group actually, and so there's messages that go out a couple times a week about different events around open ed, all focused on community college if you're interested. Put your name on that list, and I'd be happy to add you to it. And as I mentioned, we have professional development webinars monthly that are open and free to everyone. And this network is about finding collaboration partners for different grant opportunities and for presenting at conferences. And you'll have access to different resources and experts. And so we'd love to have you. And I was just going to mention Open Ed Week is coming up in March. This is completely free and open. If you'd like to participate in terms of like submitting something that you're working on that you want publicizing, you can do a webinar, you could submit a project showcase video, something on YouTube about some great work you're doing at your school. That would be great, or you can simply come to the site. There's going to be webinars that entire week on Open Ed, and this is not limited to college. This is K through 20, and it's international.
It's going to be an online.
It's an online, yeah, and it's at openeducationweek.org. But if you're going to submit something for the community colleges, the deadline is January 18th, but I think it'll be extended till the 30th. But it's a way for us to just kind of build momentum and share the excitement around Open Ed. And go up there anyway, and all the resources can be reused because everything's Creative Commons up there. We attend a lot of conferences. The executive board of the group is pretty small, but there's several of us who do attend conferences, so there's a number of us who will be at these conferences over the next 6 months. So if you have colleagues who are going to those conferences and want to meet up with us in person, we'd love to spend some time with them. And you can see the first one here is the Mid-Pacific ICT. Sorry? Oh, are you? Oh, wonderful. Oh, I'm glad you do. We're actually going to have a small reception there on the Sunday night with Creative Commons is joining us, and we'd love to see all of you. Yeah, I mean, this will be the second time I've attended. I attended one about 3 or 4 years ago. The focus is a little less on faculty and a little more on administrators, which is why you may not be as familiar with them. But they are the oldest and the largest community college organization, leadership organization. So I'd love to hear from you. And if you signed in on the sheet, I will send you the slides and some links. And I'd love, if you'd like to join our group or you'd like to hear about anything that's upcoming, just let me know. As I say, that the mail traffic on that group is really light. It's 3 or 4 messages a week, so it's not. And it's a Google group. You can remove yourself at any time. So, can I answer any other questions? Well, thank you very much for coming.